I'd like to begin by reading from Whispers from Eternity, a poem, not a poem, an unanswered prayer by Yogananda ji. And it's called Make Me See That I Am But an Actor in Thy Cosmic Motion Picture. And I'll also in the Bhagavad Gita reading pick on this theme that Yogananda ji used to often touch of light and shadows. That life is not very different from a movie, it's a very engaging movie. So I thought I'll read this. And in our morning meditation today, I read these words. Beholding the ever changing sound and motion pictures of life, I am aware that this turbulent dancing show is only a vast illusion. The tragedies, comedies, and paradoxes of life, the dreams of birth and death, the changing scenes and places that surge round us, all these are nothing but movies designed to engage us in the cosmic illusion. O divine operator, with thy cosmic vibratory light, thou dost show us ever new thrills. A motion picture true to all our five senses, keeping us amused and entertained through sight, sound, smell, taste, and touch. O magic operator, thy true seeming spectacle beams daily onto the screens of our consciousness. I take it as thy grace that I have been chosen to play both tragic and comic parts in thy drama. I am happy to have acted all those parts, both of sorrow and of joy. Still, Father, give me now and then a few days of respite from my task. Let me retire to my closet of introspection, stand before my own thought audiences, and behold with laughing heart all the tragedies and comedies I have enacted. Teach me to look upon all that happens in my life with a pleased, interested attitude, that at the end of each episode, no matter how sad or difficult, I may exclaim, "Ah, that was a good show, full of thrills, suspense, and excitement. I am happy to have seen it, and I have learned much from it for my own benefit." And then on those lines, I'd like to pick the reading for today from the Bhagavad Gita as we do every Thursday. And this is from the final chapter called You Shall Attain Me from the Bhagavad Gita, verse 20. Krishna says to Arjuna, O Arjuna, understand understand that influence to be sattvic, in which the one indestructible spirit is perceived as residing in all beings and not as separate in each of them, which is to say, Swami writes, the undivided in the divided. And this influence Krishna is calling sattvic. So, as we today celebrate Diwali, as I mentioned in our very brief meditation, that let's go back in time thousands of years ago. As Swami would say, in the Treta Yuga is when the battle of, between Ram and Ravan had happened. And here we are reading this verse from the Bhagavad Gita, that how do you and I, it's wonderful to read those stories. It's wonderful, like Swami used to say, he said, each time I read the Ramayana, he said, it's like a purifying effect on me. He said, I feel I've just taken a spiritual bath. I come out feeling cleansed, on deeper levels. And it's wonderful to read that. And people do that. They read the verses, they read certain chapters. We clean up our homes. There is celebration. I can already hear lots of crackers in the neighborhood. There is a celebration. There's a joy in the air as this day comes. And think of the power of that event, of the mass consciousness that must be there in that high age of Treta Yuga, when everybody was awake. There was a rejoicing on that level that victory of light over darkness has been accomplished. The mass consciousness was so high that it is a moment that is still remembered, and it brings, some people may say it's imaginary, but even then it's working, that it is bringing us thinking of it, reading of it, praying in that spirit brings us an upliftment. Just today, I was reading an article about the universality of these festivals, and especially the concept of light, and as it is associated in Diwali, that why is it universal? Well, because we may not realize it, but deep within us and long ago in time, everybody felt, if light overcame darkness somewhere, it has an uplifting influence everywhere in each one of us. Like they say, when Buddha attained enlightenment, in that moment where his battle with Mara, Satan as it is called in Buddhism, when he overcame that, they say this wave of uplifting joy, this blessing went across the planet a few times. And two ladies who were quarreling, for a moment, they stopped in the middle of the quarrel. A man who was feeling sad, for a moment, looked up and smiled. And the birds and the animals, there was a certain chirping and joy. The weather, for a moment, took a turn for good. And it was like this blessing goes, and we scarcely realize who is in the light, who is in that blessing, and why are we feeling so uplifted. I have to say that Swami Kriyananda ji, as he would be, like Swami ji would say this about Yogananda ji, that Yogananda ji could be talking about potholes and he says he felt so much bliss around him. The same thing, Swami ji. Now, sometimes in Swami's own words, you feel nothing around a master. But the point is, anytime somebody is established in that peace, it is a blessing for everybody. And which is why, even though this event, you might say, happened historically thousands of years ago, thinking of it brings us joy, brings us upliftment. Now, in that verse in the Bhagavad Gita, Sri Krishna is telling Arjuna to keep this in mind, that we engage. You see, that chapter at that particular phase is talking about the three gunas. Tamoguna being that influence in nature, in this universe, which deadens our ability to feel good things, feel anything. And he says, he's talking about that. In this particular verse, he's talking about sattva. And in between sattva and tamoguna is rajoguna, which is activating. And I won't go in those details over here, but he's saying that influence is said to be sattvic, where you can see a unity. You begin to see, as they say, the complete picture. Like Swami, he didn't have an easy life. No saint actually has that. He used to often remind us, he says, remember Yoganandaji's words always, that an easy life is a victorious life. That painstaking deliberation, Yoganandaji said, whenever a good thing has to be done, there are these opposing forces in creation. And you wonder, why are those opposing forces there? And I think every devotee goes through that thought a couple decades ago, many years ago. And very quickly you get the plot and you wonder, why are these enemies so strong? Where did they get these weapons from? Why can't this be a simple affair? It's very clear that Ram should win. It is very clear that this should happen. And, you say, why is this happening? Why are they so, why? God is the playwright, God is the director. Look at Mahabharata again. It's not easy to decipher these things. But that is where Swami says, on one level, it is a dream. On the other hand, he says, if your influence is a bit on the lower side, in the tamas or rajas. He says, you're so restless, you're so deadened to these higher realities and truths that you just have to suffer long enough to say, I'm tired of this. I want to know what's going on. And he says, then you summon your energy, you summon your mental forces, you summon your citizens, and you say, let's find out what's happening. And the closer, it's almost like this inner battle of this downward tendency within us, which ultimately does not bring us joy. And that upward lifting tendency, the light, the return of Ram consciousness, Christ consciousness, Krishna consciousness, God consciousness, that consciousness in which every saint lives, and we all can live. Ultimately, we realize that I was made for that. It's like St. Francis asking Christ one time, deep in prayer, he was sobbing. He had finally reached that point in his life where a wealthy household, his father was extremely wealthy, that didn't make him happy. He had a very loving mother, that didn't make him happy. The whole town of Assisi, all of them were his friends, that didn't make him happy. Celebrating, throwing parties for his friends, food, music, that didn't make him happy. Generosity, charity, giving away his father's wealth with both hands, that also stopped making him happy. That's a very sattvic, generous, expansive attitude. It brings a lot of joy. It is more blessed to give than to receive because there's bliss in giving. And he was doing that, but still he was not happy. And he let out this cry in a cave one time, my Lord, why am I not happy? And like his playmate, Christ whispered in his ears, oh Francis, how could you ever be happy without me? That it just is like it takes the longest time for us to realize that there's only one thing where true happiness is to be found and never to be lost, and that is in God. Until that time, you might say, we are waging this battle. Sita is being taken away, Ram is chasing after the demons, Hanuman comes to the rescue, a whole army of those monkey citizens, our mental citizens, tendencies, they're all each in their own way trying their best, and there are times when you're winning, there are times you're losing, great heroes are falling, so much drama. But that was just one battle. Remember, it's happening all the time simultaneously. The goal in life is not to keep reading these scriptures. The goal is to understand, am I winning? Am I in that light? Do I see that light? Do I live in that light? Do I channel that light? Do I give that light? Like Blazy was saying in the beginning, today is a day of remembrance and celebration. But every day, every moment, Swami used to say, ultimately has to be lived like this. Now, it's not an easy thing to do, as one can see, but true devotion requires, Swami used to say, heroic love. It requires a courage which surpasses your, you might say, ordinary adventure movie or, those things, human love story and drama. He says, you require something extraordinary over there to reestablish the kingdom of God within you. Now, I'd like to share a few stories over here because you see, when we live in that light, like that verse was saying, then it makes sense. As Ram, there's an interesting scene in the Ramayana. I'll just narrate a few of those which make a lot of sense because any time our consciousness is not established, you might say at the Agya Chakra, or Master used to say, try to stay here all the time. Meditation helps us stay here in meditation, but then throughout daily activities, through different japa, techniques, willpower, awareness. We need to stay here. We need to keep the heart's energy. Swami used to often say this towards the end of his life, the heart is like a lotus. Keep its petals upturned all the time. And he says that will feed energy to the spiritual eye. You will live in the Spirit of God as He intended. So let's think of this moment just before the battle of Ramayana, in the Ramayana between Ram and Ravan was about to start, Ram had given a few warnings. He had given some messengers had gone across, and they were waiting. And twice, Ravan had refused to return Sita. And it's just like that consciousness is stolen. It's in matter consciousness. And we don't give up easily our desires. We say, no, 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 this is very dear to me. I ask for anything, but don't ask for this. This I'd like to really keep. And, there's such sweet symbolism over here. And Ram gives a few warnings and he said, well, the battle has to begin. As we know about these battles, God ultimately has to win because either the enemy dies or he suffers so much that he pleads forgiveness and then the battle stops. In that moment, because they had to prepare for this battle, many commanders on the side of Ram were getting anxious that Ram give the instructions that prepare for battle. And Ram was very relaxed and calm at that moment. He said, let the messenger come. So Lakshman, his younger brother, got anxious and agitated. He said, why are we waiting? Let's go ahead and teach Ravan a lesson and let's get done with this. And others also, as one gets emotional, the others got emotional too. And Ram was saying, he was looking at each one and they were expressing the same thoughts. And he looked at Hanuman and Hanuman looked at him. And because he saw his master was calm and smiling for some reason, he did not comment. He didn't say anything. And then Ram said a remarkable thing. He said, I don't know why. He said, there might be a battle. You all are quite right. It's quite possible there will be a battle tomorrow. He said, but I don't know why. But Ravan feels anciently familiar to me. He seems somebody who is very close to me and dear to me. Now, you see, God is not anxious for battle. When we as children were watching the movie of the Ramayana, you're like, oh, when is this going to happen? Who has the bigger arrow? Whose body is bigger? Oh, Hanuman's Gada is going to beat the pulp out of that demon. And we get very anxious and happy. And there is some joy when the good side is winning. And there is the bad side, you might say, thrives in battle because it's restless. It does not give into divine qualities easily. But however, Ram was just the same, like Krishna, just the same. And the deeper mystery is that Ravan was actually, believe it or not, some of you may know, he was the bodyguard. He was, I think his name was Jaya. Jaya and Vijay, they were the gatekeepers of Vishnu. And you think about it, and then some argument had happened and there was emotions came in and that led to reincarnation. And here they found themselves, Ravan again trying to wage a war out of his restlessness, out of his emotion, not willing, not recollecting, not remembering, as it happens to us. Restlessness, when the feelings get disturbed, we forget who we are. We forget that the person in front of us, the situation in which we are finding ourselves, we may have attracted it. Well, that's called karma. How do you now? The same situation has come back. How are we faring in that situation? And like Hanuman, everybody was emotional. He was calm. He had the wisdom, the sense that no, something over here is happening which I don't understand. I will side with my master. And Swami used to say, he wrote in the book Demystifying Patanjali, he said, when karma comes, stay calm first. He said, if you're calm, then you will see why what is happening is happening. And because that sense will come, he says, you will be able to overcome it. You will not once again be reactive. That is how, in calmness, Master said, bliss is held longer. So if we are trying to hold divine consciousness, establish God consciousness in ourselves, first be calm. And then in that calmness, more and more will be given to us, more understanding will come to us. There's another beautiful story of Hanuman, the great devotee of Lord Rama, forgetting who he really is. Now, this seems very comical when you look at it. Why is such a wise general having to be reminded who he was in childhood? We think of it in a linear way. It's one lifetime. For example, I don't forget what I was like when I was 3 or 4 years old. So I was like, how can Hanuman forget he had these powers? Well, the allegory is you and I have forgotten incarnations ago, where did we start this journey? What was the mission and the powers given to us? And what is being asked of us today? It seems too much. Sometimes a devotee does get discouraged. Oh my goodness, this game seems to be never ending. How am I ever going to make this leap over all this ocean, these waves, these emotions, these demons who are ready to pounce on me? They can get so big. I'm a little creature after all. And somebody has to shake us up. The Guru shakes us up, wakes us up. Come on, you can do this. Do you know who you are? Do you know who your father is? Do you know what divine child you are? And then you come back to your senses. You say, yes, I have a faint recollection. Now what shall I do? And as Hanuman was instructed, if Sri Ram has asked you to do this, he must have seen the capability in you. Take his name, hold on to his consciousness, and you shall be able to carry his message, spread his message, help him win the war. You see, Ram could do it all, friends, as we know very well. All great avatars could do it, but this whole spectrum that plays out in their life before they are born, much, much, much after they have left their physical body, this entire effect they have on civilization itself. What to speak of all those people they meet in person in their incarnation? It is because it's like 0 to 100, you might say, that they help uplift everyone. They come to soften hardened sinners that who are not able to be helped by their own efforts also. And it is over here you have to see that just like Hanuman was he was woken up, that come on, realize that you and I need those reminders. We need to remind one another, and we need to tell ourselves that it is not I who do it. Like Bhagavad Gita says, God is the doer. When we stay in that high consciousness, you can think that who reminded Hanuman? It was one of his other commanders. Stay in good company, sattvic company, like Sri Krishna was saying. They will remind you what is the goal of life. They will remind you which battles to pick. They will remind you of your own divine potential, which sometimes we ourselves may be refuting. But that is not how you win a war. Be a hero. Do this for Lord Ram by his grace. And then he said, Jai Shri Ram. And he was able to fly, fly, fly. And I remember again, all of us must be going through that excitement as a child. Whoa, he's just not falling down. He's flying and flying and flying. Well, that's because that's the grace of Guru that carries us. Swami used to say, it's always there, but you need to make the beginning. Make the supreme effort. Get in tune. He said, when you tune yourself to that grace, he said, you will always realize it was always there, waiting for you to tap into it. But grace does not come to our level. Another lesson over there, which is one of my favorite stories, I've narrated it in satsangs many times, so I'll keep it brief, is that of Bharat. Often I think your and my situation is like Bharat. We can see shades of ourselves in all, including, honestly, sometimes even Ravan. I know we shouldn't be affirming that, but when you're lazy, when you're unwilling to things, you're expressing some of those qualities, but don't dwell on that. When you think of Hanuman, yes, he's the ideal devotee. We see ourselves over there. When we are siding, we may be on the side of wrong, but when we side, we finally make up our mind, no, I'm going to side with the right. You have that little bit of that Vibhishan consciousness, which is finally gathering the courage to stand by whatever he believes in, and from there his good times begin. But Bharat, I say particularly because Bharat was unwilling to handle the kingdom for those 14 years when Ram was going on, you might say, a larger mission. And does it not happen to you and me? We are not willing to take responsibility. We say, oh, Lord Ram should do it, Guru should do it, God will do it. I don't want to do it. Well, if you don't do it, how will you grow? That's what Ram said to Bharat. Bharat said, I don't know anything, brother. I don't know. Who will help me? People love you. They need you. We want you to come. You are the oldest one. You know how to do it best. You are a divine incarnation. Well, but how will you become divine, Bharat? Like somebody said to Master, oh, Master, you can do it. Master says, and how did I learn to do it? How did I become a master? That person said, sir, you're a master. You can do anything. And Master says, and how did I become a master? It is by doing exactly what I'm telling you to do that I became a master of myself. The moral being very simple, that day by day by day, again, Bharat had kept his brother Ram's chappals over there, that I am serving only as a custodian, only as a trustee of this work. This is Ram's kingdom. He will come one day and take charge of things. In his absence, I will have to work for my sake, for fulfilling his word, and to lead by example. Ram was not going on a vacation. He was going on a much larger work and mission. He was doing his part. Bharat had to do his part. And finally, friends, as it happened in the Bhagavad Gita also, at the end of the Mahabharat, one by one, when the Pandavas left their bodies, they reached heaven. And lo and behold, who do they find in heaven before them? Many of the Kauravas were sitting there. How did they reach that? The thing is that, like it says in the Bhagavad Gita, there is no death. That on an outward level, of course, a person who does wrong cannot reach heaven, you might say. On the other hand, when a wrong quality in you and me is killed, is transmuted, is offered up to God and converted, it becomes godly, and it is placed in heaven. It is placed, heaven is here. Those lower tendencies become the higher tendencies. They become godly. And of course, you find them then heaven, in the heaven. Similarly, I was so happy as a child because I was feeling for those monkeys who were dying left and right. Those demons would throw a tree on them and it was like, there go 20 monkeys. And I said, oh my goodness, these monkeys are going very fast. But then in the end, after the war had ended, I think it was the god of the seas, the Indian Ocean. After the battle was over and Ram came on this side, the gods came, they praised him, they threw rose petals on him. And then they had a surprise. By the movement of his hand, all the monkeys who had died on the coast, they all came back to life. And there was such rejoicing. It's like, okay, mission accomplished. Let's go home. And that is what it is all about, friends. Like Master was saying, this movie, it seems so real, so engaging to all our senses, to our beings. Swami used to say, even by reasoning, you cannot come out of it. Only by daily stilling your heart, stilling your breath, stilling your consciousness, offering yourself in meditation to Lord Ram's consciousness, Christ consciousness, Guru's consciousness. Slowly, slowly, slowly that remembrance comes. I am in a dream. This is a dream going on. I should make this a good dream for myself and for others. But most importantly, I need to win this battle. I need to wake up from this dream. And when we wake up, Swami used to say, as I was saying in the beginning, he had a very difficult life. But towards the end of his life, somebody asked him, Sir, you went through so many tests in your life. And he had gone through them. And he said, What tests? And he used to often quote this saying by the saint Al Rabia. He said, He is no true devotee of God who does not forget all suffering in the contemplation of the divine beloved, that gets so absorbed in God, in one of his aspects, in your sadhana, in contemplating the Guru's consciousness, that when you're in that consciousness, the memory, the feeling, hurt feelings simply cease to exist. Where the light falls, darkness cannot exist. Darkness disappears. Darkness as if was never there. And so on this day, our highest responsibility and remembrance is, let us live in the light. Let us become that light. Let us see the world through that divine light from within, outside, as Sri Krishna is saying. Then you see the unity. Then even in Ravan, you say, because you have the wisdom and the power, you say, no, I will have to fight. But this fight is not personal. It is just to help him stop propagating evil and to turn into the light. And then the entire other if Ravan was on one spectrum, everything else, like I mentioned, is the other aspect of that spectrum. So when we wake up, Master said, he says, then you will realize you were in a dream. You will not feel angry at God. You will, all your questions will be answered. This movie would have come to a climatic end, and you would say, wow, my Lord, what a movie this was. And one by one, Master says, this is how we have to wake up and wake up our brothers and sisters. So I'd like to